Globally, the growing number of women in policy and decision-making process has spiced of politics of nation-states and brought about far-reaching changes that stimulate growth and development. Nigeria's landscape is a rich reference of this trend. Late edition this week looks at Nigerian women in position of leadership and the desire to build a humane and egalitarian society. Hello and thanks for joining us on Late Edition. I am Ibrahim Ismaila Ahmed. Professor Dora Akunyili is a national icon. Her running battle with merchants of fake and counterfeit medicines across the West African sub-region and her role in stabilizing our democracy were legendary and brought her more into the consciousness of the nation. The pharmacology professor was DG Nafdac, as well as the nation's immediate past Minister of Information and Communication. Professor Dora is our guest on Late Edition this week. Madam, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, a few years back, I recall watching the wedding of one of your children on television. Can you just briefly give us an idea of who you are over the years?
Well, I'm Professor Dora Akunyili. I'm from a native of Anambra State. I was born to a upper middle class family at Makurdi, and at a very young age I went to live with my grandmother. There I finished my primary school. From there I went to secondary school at KRSS in Soka. From there to the University of Nigeria in Soka. After my first degree, I went through a direct PhD program, then later postdoctoral as a Commonwealth scholar in the University of London. I came back, I became a senior lecturer thereafter, from being a senior lecturer to going into public life, becoming a caretaker committee member of my local government, a member of many state boards. From there, I went to work in PTF as the zonal secretary of the Southeast Zone. From PTF, I became Nafdac Director General. From being Nafdac Director General, I became Minister of Information and Communication.
Many people know you for during your tenure in Nafdac, which many say was a watershed in Nigeria's history in the fight against counterfeit drugs, both within Nigeria and the West African sub-region. What would you say is the major driving force towards this your success?
First of all, I owe what I am to this country, Nigeria. And I've always believed that there is nothing I can do for my country that would equal what the country has done for me. All through my life, I went through school on scholarship because I'm a Nigerian. My secondary education was on scholarship because I had a distinction in my primary school certificate. My university education was on scholarship because I had a distinction for my school certificate. And my PhD was, of course, on scholarship. I was also a graduate assistant. My postdoctoral in University of London, Commonwealth Fellowship Award, because Nigeria is in the Commonwealth. So you can see Nigeria has pampered me all my life. Secondly, the way I was appointed as Director General Nafdac left me with no option than to really fight with all my life. President Obasanjo appointed me Director General Nafdac despite stiff political opposition. Most of the politicians had their candidates. Even the then Senate President had a strong candidate that he wanted for the position. But trust President Obasanjo, he's a man, I wouldn't call him stubborn, I would call him somebody that is steadfast in whatever he believes in. Positively stubborn, put it that way. Because of what he heard about me when I was in PTF, he believed that I would be able to do the job. And I quote him, he said that corruption is the bane of regulation. That once somebody can shun money, it is almost done for any regulatory activity. And what the problem we had in Nafdac was poor regulation, fueled by corruption, and of course, lack of public awareness. So when President Obasanjo insisted on appointing me, politicians came up with reasons why I should not be appointed. They said, well, this is an Igbo lady. The Minister of Health is also Igbo, Professor ABC Nwosu, and who are the drug counterfeiters. So they had a very strong reason, I can say, and gender was also an issue, but it's not hardly brought on the table of discussion. So when President Obasanjo looked at all these things and insisted on putting me in that position, I was challenged. It's like I cannot disappoint this man who has trusted me so much. And besides, I also felt it was a position of trust. And my own sister died of counterfeit medicine.
Yes, I wanted to say, many people say you had a driving, personal driving
it's a very big driving force, because I always remembered how she died. She died from counterfeit insulin, to infection at the injection sites. And when I got into Nafdac, the first things I saw that really put me on fire was insulin injections that were just water, unsterilized. So that actually confirmed to me that it was not only that these insulin injections were not able to bring down this poor girl's blood sugar, but also introduced infections at the sites of injection, because the criminals were not even fair enough to package sterilized water, but they packaged not only products that were not insulin, but products that were not sterilized. So it was a very big driving force. And I also know there were families that had suffered and that we are still suffering. And I felt that, well, as a Christian, as a child of God, God gave me an opportunity to stop that menace, to stop that blood sucking that did not really start in 2001. Remember that blood counterfeit, I call it blood counterfeiting, blood suckers, they started their business in 1968. That was when the first counterfeit drug was detected in Nigeria, when the Crown agents divested as sole distributors of pharmaceuticals. And they grew from strength to strength until they took over the space. So that by early 2001, over 41% of drugs in circulation were outrightly fake. Over 68 were unregistered. So we were in a crisis situation. It was not only drug, what of food? Yes, what of baby milk, infant formula that was cassava flour with sugar and a little milk. Professor, can you imagine how many babies that died?
Yes, Professor, I wanted to say, before your assumption as DG Nafdac, Nafdac was existing, but it was not bearing its teeth. What was your action plan?
Well, when I came into Nafdac, first of all, I wanted to succeed. I think that should be number one in any assignment. If you tell yourself you want to succeed, every other thing will follow. Then what made the past administrations not to succeed? We needed to examine it with my wonderful staff. We laid off some staff, yes. But we kept most of the staff because what they needed was training and retraining and reorientation for them to appreciate that this is a special assignment, that it was a special assignment. And we started restructuring, creating more directorates, and very importantly, having zero tolerance to corruption. because the bane of regulation is corruption. Corruption and, of course, lack of awareness, because if people know what you're doing, then you get help. If people don't know what you're doing, you can just be collecting money and relaxing. But if you are focused on succeeding and shun people's money, irrespective of whose ox is God, it's not just money that is involved in corruption. When people are your relations, you should not start looking at people as my brothers or sisters or friends. You should be moving like a train in anti-corruption movement, especially in the area of counterfeit medicine, because it's a form of corruption and the worst aspect of corruption. So when we now started like enforced our registration processes, started, sanctions, registrations were being done before I went to Nafdac, but there were very little sanctions. And when there are no sanctions, human beings would like to do whatever they like to, whatever is easier for them. Then we put in place very strong people outside this country, especially in India and China, to recertify drugs before they are imported into the country. That gave us huge success. And the person that certified our drugs in India, Gudal, in fact, Indians even tell me that the problem with Gudal is that he doesn't know that there's 99%. It must be 100. He was the head of Food and Drug of Mumbai, and a man of impeccable integrity, a man that even his enemies would tell you that this man is honest to the core. We had one in China. We were very desperate to get somebody in China, and in the end, when it became very difficult, we took somebody that eventually turned out to be very good. And again, we had a very strong structure at the ports, ensuring that samples are taken and of course, and tested, and of course, ensuring that they bring documentation from our analysts abroad. You see, these things, if they're not enforced, they come to nothing. We also had sustained systematic surveillance of all shops and markets from time to time to clean out the counterfeit drug and, of course, sanction people. It was when the traders at Onitsha started beating up our staff and destroying our vehicles that we closed the market. We didn't just close the market because there were counterfeit drugs there. No, not that we would allow them, but if they had allowed us to do our routine screening, we would have screened and removed from time to time whatever we felt was not the best for our people. So we had strategies that were novel. And these strategies came into my head from time to time. I shared with my hardworking staff, and they always moved with me because I slept, I ate, I walked Nafdac. It was my life.
Yes, it was.
Like, for instance, a landlord, if we get any building with counterfeit medicine consignment, and the owners started running away, we would not be able to find the owners. We put up regulations that the landlords will be arrested. And as soon as we arrested a landlord in Lagos, people knew we were serious. Okay. And people stopped accepting to keep people's drugs until they cleared from Nafdac. It was holistic.
Madam, you were operating in Nigeria. I'm sorry, it's our country, reputed to be corrupt. How were you able to get your staff to buy into your vision and be dedicated to this fight?
It is very easy for staff to buy into the vision of a leader because the leader dictates the tune. When staff knows that you are not collecting money from criminals, they will not collect. And when they know that when they are caught, they are dismissed, they are sanctioned immediately, they are afraid. People are afraid of sanctions. And in addition, I found ways of making staff comfortable. You see, you can't tell people not to take bribe when they are hungry. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that when people are hungry, they should take bribe, but we should try and make life comfortable for people, at least, so as to give you the moral high standing to punish them when they get compromised. Like, I gave them 13th month salary. I was giving them several welfare benefits, marriages, burials, and sending them on GMP inspection, but pharmacies and non-pharmacies, making sure that for each inspection there must be pharmacies. So in that way, most Nafdac staff had opportunity to travel. And when they travel, they get their estaco, they get exposed. So with all these lagars, I was able to find myself in a position to tell them, listen, we are doing all this for you to be comfortable. Please, let us grow Nafdac so that all of us would enjoy and our own people would be kept alive for Nafdac to remain alive.
Inasmuch as it was a life and death issue, drug administration and control, it was also a do-or-die affair for some of the drug barons, let me call them that, because the counterfeiters. What were some of the challenges you faced, and how were you able to overcome them?
Thank you very much. The drug counterfeiters were, first of all, believing that it was the usual Nigerian thing, that this woman is just making noise. In a few months, we pay her off, and we go back to business as usual. They sent people to talk to me. There was one that each time I remember, I get goose flesh. Somebody coming to say, you see, you can't really fight these people. They are totally entrenched. What you can do is, if they have 10 containers, you can tell them the 9 containers they should take, and then you retain one, seize that one container, make noise about it, and then business will go on. Take your money and go. This is what people do in this country. And you see, when I screamed at him, he started saying he was joking. That kind of thing. Or people come and say, we want to discuss how to do things, how we really want to give you X, Y, Z money, and you say, which money? And you see, your reaction would not even allow that discussion to continue. And I also had problems of people collecting money and claiming that they were collecting for me. That was at the initial stage when people did not know what I was up to. There was one example of somebody that collected 2 million from a company and told that company that was coming for mediation in Nafdac with another company that he was going to give me the money and that they were going to get their whatever approved. So when they came for the meeting, the guy actually brought the man to my house, but when they came like it was Christmas, and he was playing familiarity with me. I didn't know he was trying to tell the man, look, we are friends. Anyway, so in the end, when they came for this arbitration and their case was bad, and they said, nonsense, you can't do this. If you try it again, bam, bam, bam. So they left. They went to my husband and said, we sent 2 million naira to your wife through this person, and your wife disgraced us before everybody today. And my husband said, my wife, it is impossible. Go and take your money. So when I came back on weekend, my husband said, this is what is happening. I said, I'll call the police, I'll do this, I'll take them off. My husband said, look, cool down. Criminals can go to any length. If you take them up, it is your words against their words. And you may never win, because they will lie and lie until they destabilize and distract you. The only thing you can say, which you can be reinforcing what I said, is to tell them to go and take their money, because that man has done 419 to them. So there were occasions like that. But you know what? After about 6 months, there was no longer any move by anybody to bribe me, because people now came to accept that there was no need for going to approach this woman.
You will not be compromised.
Because she would not be compromised. So I had no problem after maybe 4 or 5 months. And in fact, if anybody was giving money or asked to come and give me money to compromise me 7 months after being in office, that person would say, I will not go, because she would not take. So that was settled, totally settled. And you see, these criminals, when their monies were rejected, they got violent, they got frustrated, because they had been operating like kings and lords. Big companies thought that it was going to be easy for them, like Nestle and others, that we are packing expired milk and others, and we stopped them. In fact, that Nestle case was even, they were caught before I became DG Nafdac, but it was being covered up. So the director, Mrs. Ukebu, a very upright woman, came and told me that this Nestle case was covered some months ago. Are you willing for me to bring it up? I said, please, bring it up. We cannot cover anything. If we cover big people and face small people, then we better stop regulatory work, because there's no way we can succeed. So she brought the file, and I took it up. And eventually, the milk was destroyed. They paid fine, I wrote an apology, and similar other companies. And you see, these things went international. People started knowing, Nigeria is no longer a dumping ground. I went to India. I had meetings with the drug manufacturers, with the regulators, and I told them to their face in India that you are killing our people. The fake drugs are coming from here and from China. The genuine drugs are produced and distributed here, and you're sending counterfeit to us. This is not right, and this is what we have come to fight. This is what the president and the minister have told us to fight, and have put in place independent analysts that must be respected. If your drugs are not analyzed and certified, cannot get to Nigeria and so on and so forth. Anyway, so when these criminals got frustrated, they started threatening me, threatening my family, writing my husband. They went to Benedion High School to kidnap my son. My son denied me. He said I was not his mom, I was his auntie. And in fact, because of that, we had to whisk him to join his siblings in America. Because my children actually went to America long before I became DG Nafdac, because I won the American visa lottery. Anyway, and let me not digress. So this continued until they got...
Well, it's something I'd wanted to know. You didn't tell me your husband and your number of children anyway.
I will tell you. They got violent, they got frustrated, and they started by attacking Nafdac staff. As I told you, they attacked them at Onitsha. Destroyed 6 vehicles when they didn't want them to screen the market. They attacked them in Kano. They burnt our buildings. They attacked me and shot me from the back. My headscarf was shattered. Was
that close?
It was very close, because the scalp was burnt like hot water burn. The case is still in court. One of the suspects had been released by the Supreme Court, but others are still in court. And my prayer is that in my lifetime, that case will be concluded. Because if it is not concluded, it's not good for our country. And so on and so forth, and eventually the whole system got stabilized. When they thought I would run away, and I refused to run. My family actually did not want me to go on second term. That was why it took me about 1.5 years to write letter for my second tenure. I was inside my second tenure for 1.5 years before I wrote a letter, because my board, especially my chairman, Dr. Andy Andem, kept saying, listen, whatever you're doing in Nafdac, somebody can go to court and declare them illegal because you've not gotten second tenure. Because I didn't write. My family didn't want me to have second tenure. It was President Obasanjo that called my husband and talked to him to support me to go on after 5 years.
Professor, I just want to find out from you, as a Nigerian who's been through this in Nafdac, what's your belief in Nigerians and our capacity really to turn around our country for better?
We can turn around any institution, any agency, any ministry, if we are determined to do that. If we are determined to shun money, if we are determined to face the consequences of swimming against the tide. Because it is swimming against the tide. There are consequences. There would be verbal attacks, and there may be physical attacks.
From what you've started now in the institutionalization of this fight in Nigeria, how would you assess the fight against fake and counterfeit medicines across the West African sub-region today?
That is an aspect that really makes me happy, and that was part of why I was given an award in Niger. When drug counterfeiters were being chased out of Nigeria, because Nigerian regulatory environment became too hot for them, they started migrating to other West African countries and became a big problem to them. Our success in Nigeria started casting dark shadows on our neighbors. I therefore decided to institute WADRAN, West African Drug Regulatory Authorities Network, as a platform for West African drug regulators to platform to share strategies and work together so that these criminals would not find a country a safe haven to continue with their nefarious businesses. And to do that, I invited regulators from all over West Africa. We had a meeting in Abuja in 2007, 6, and in that meeting, we agreed on how to work together, and that really affected them very positively. I didn't really realize how much work I did for the sub-region until when I visit these countries, even on private basis. I see how grateful they are. I've been to Sierra Leone, I've been to Ghana, I've been to Niger, and some of these countries, and Cameroon, and when I go there, it's like they're even feeling that I'm doing more work for them than I'm doing in Nigeria. But actually, we are working for them, not just for their sake, but to make sure that these criminals would not go somewhere and reorganize, because they were actually being chased out.
Now, it's emerged in the international news in this past week that one-tenth of all drugs is fake across the world, and hence the need for coordinated approach. How difficult was it for Nigeria kind of doing it alone at that time?
We were not doing it alone. We were doing it alone in Nigeria, but we were working with other parts of the world. WADRAN, West Africa, as I told you, and IMPACT, International Anti-Counterfeiting, which I actually championed. I was the person that started calling for international collaboration, and it's been recognized world over that I started, now I wouldn't say I actually, Nafdac started propagating international collaboration, and it has now caught on. And in fact, was it 2 days ago, some drug companies, 29 drug companies gave $6 million to Interpol to help in fighting counterfeit medicine and so on. So you see, drug counterfeiting involves a transnational criminal network and can only be fought through international collaboration.
Yes, with somebody with your kind of experience now, if you are called upon by any of these international organizations to really participate in this, what would be your response?
Oh, I will jump at it, because fighting these drug counterfeiters is my passion. I have been invited by countries to help them structure their regulatory activities. The last place I went to was Sierra Leone. And I even start by telling them that I don't want to negotiate payment. I am desperate to help and ensure that these criminals would not continue to kill our people. So I have so much passion for eradicating counterfeit medicine that there's no way I would be called anywhere and I would not go. There was a time I was called by United States Agency for Food and Drug in Kenya, but that was when I was indisposed. That was the only time I did not respond. Otherwise, whenever I'm invited anytime, anywhere in the world, and I have the space, I go. And whenever I go, people feel happy, because somehow some people don't know how to get these things together, because I've worked it all my life in it for over 7.5 years. It's part of me.
Professor Dora Akunyili, better known as Minister of Information and Communications, best known as a fighter against fake and counterfeit drugs in Nigeria, is our guest on Late Edition. We'll take a break now. More from the professor when we come back. You're watching Late Edition with me, Ibrahim Ismaila Ahmed. And our guest today is Professor Dora Akunyili, immediate past Minister of Information and Communications and one-time Director General, Nafdac. Professor, you recently bagged an African award awarded to you in Niger Republic, together with other distinguished African women, for your leadership in Nafdac and helping to stabilize democracy in Nigeria. Now, this award is coming 4.5 years after you left office. What reflections did that give you?
Well, it actually made me feel that that comfort that when you work with all your heart, with all your might, and putting your best in any situation, people don't forget. Not only in Nigeria, universally. I was actually pleasantly surprised. 4.5 years after Nafdac, and 2.5 years or more after the Ministry of Information. And people are still calling me, not just in Nigeria, but outside Nigeria, to recognize the work we did. I feel honestly very grateful to God and to the good people of Niger Republic, especially the wife of their president, who sponsored that award, the president who was totally in support. There was a word they used for it, and then the organizers and their Ministry of Women Affairs that worked with their First Lady.
Part of the reason for that award was your courage at a critical time of Nigeria. We'll be discussing that in a moment. But obviously your profile in Nafdac facilitated your choice into the federal cabinet. How did it happen, considering that you are not a politician?
Well, when I was in Nafdac, my acceptability in the country became legendary because people appreciated, they still appreciate what we did. And because of that, President Obasanjo announced that I announced me as the mobilizer of something like that, of Yar'adua's campaign. And I didn't like the position because I felt my hands were full in Nafdac. But because I needed to obey a constituted authority and the man that put down his feet to employ me as DG Nafdac, I joined the campaign as the Director of Mobilization. So that was actually my first time into going into partisan politics, but going into public service was from when I went into local government position. We can go back to that.
I wanted to know how you got to become a minister.
How I got to become a minister. So after the campaign, the president was sworn in, and when he reshuffled, he made me Minister of Information and Communications. And that was announced after all the oath taking and all the ceremonies. I didn't really expect to be Minister of Information because it's information for me is like 180 degrees away from me. I wanted a critical ministry where I could go and achieve X in 6 months, X in another 3 months, and so on. I'm not saying that...
I think you are not the only person that was surprised.
Yes.
How come you were given the ministry portfolio?
From what President Yar'adua told me, may he so rest in peace, we had image problem, and I was suited in that position to handle information at a time when government was not actually too acceptable to the people. So my acceptability to the people became an asset for government. So that was why I was put in that position. I felt very bad, I must tell you that. And it would have been difficult for me to accept it if I was told earlier. But you know, in Nigeria, it's after the swearing in and everything that this is announced. But I quickly reminded myself with my daughter and the mother-in-law that came to support me and my husband that this is the soul and this information is the soul and image of Nigeria, and I can still be there and make the best out of it. I know that wherever I found myself, I would try to turn around the place, and I encouraged myself. Again, I remembered something that happened 6 months before that appointment. My elder sister had a dream that I was made Minister of Information, and I told her she had malaria, that she should go and buy Coatem, because there was no way in this world I could be made Minister of Information. So that dream is called by malaria hallucination.
It didn't occur to you that your profile now as somebody that Nigerians respect would be used to kind of mobilize Nigerians?
It didn't occur to me at all. But when I remembered my elder sister's dream, I said, wow, nothing happens without God's approval. So I swung into action. Most of the journalists, most of you didn't want me. You said I was not part of you. And they abused me all over the place, but I didn't listen. I just continued as if nothing was happening. Such that by the time I finished that first part, and when I was reappointed, before I was reappointed, the same journalists that were saying they didn't want me because I'm not a journalist, they were writing to say they wanted me back.
During your tenure as Information and Communications Minister, you brought many programs and slogans to shore up Nigeria's image abroad and ensure that Nigerians are patriotic. How would you assess these campaigns that you, good people,
great nation? I would say it's one of the best things that had ever happened to this country. Because it was rebranding that was people-oriented. It was not government-oriented. And in fact, that rebranding is even more popular outside this country than in Nigeria.
How?
In Niger, they are excited about it. Nigerians, this is the first time Nigerians are coming out to say, we are indeed good people, and it's a great nation, without making any pretense about it. And good people, great nation is still being used in some products. I feel so excited about it. And when you get into Heathrow, the big signboard you see, is it GT Bank? Nigeria, good people, great nation. Does it not lift your spirit when you see it? And I believe that that rebranding Nigeria campaign, by the grace of God, could still come back sometime in our lifetime. But even if it doesn't, it will continue to permeate into the system. For the fact that the slogan is still in use will tell you that it's an accepted slogan. You know, Madam... and it was not about slogan. The slogan was just a driving force, remember? Yes, you know, many a Nigerian critic say, but for the existence of the likes of the parastatals in the Ministry of Information, NTA, Voice of Nigeria, Radio Nigeria, NAN, that the ministry is kind of irrelevant. If not for this kind of intellectual direction, you, and I think to an extent Nweki Jr., tried to give it. Are you also in tune with this, that there is need to reform the Ministry of Information and its role generally? But they are right. The critics are right. Ministry of Information needs re-engineering. Because if a ministry is not relevant, if a ministry is not speaking to the minds of people's needs, that ministry becomes irrelevant. And that was why I brought in the Rebranding Nigeria campaign, so that Ministry of Information would not just be a ministry of reading news and then reading news, kind of, and analyzing news. And I believe it needs re-engineering. I don't. If I tell you I know how else it can be done, then I would be lying. The only way I felt it could be done was through that rebranding. Because if we had continued with rebranding, by now it would have gotten into the nerves and fabrics of this system, whereby people would start actually reassessing the way we assess ourselves, reorientation, bringing up that spirit of patriotism and going back to bring up those beautiful cultural values and telling the world who we are, because most of the time people tell us who we are. People define ourselves for us instead of us defining ourselves to the world. It was catching on all over. Even in America, they were asking for rights to produce our shirts of Nigeria, good people, great nation. Anyway, I believe that that Rebranding Nigerian project was a good program. That was why President Yar'adua approved it. And I believe it caught on, and I believe it is still on in one way or the other. For the fact that people are still talking about it means that it's worth discussing and it was worth doing. Professor, all your life, you had either been an academic or a technocrat, doing fine and enjoying life. What attracted you to politics? Life. I was an accidental politician, let me put it that way. I was a lecturer, and my dream was to become a renowned professor, to make some inventions in the area of drugs. I really wanted to be a world-renowned professor. I dreamt it. So I didn't want to have anything to do with politics. You can't mix wanting to be a renowned politician and professor and politics. My husband used to go to the village to treat patients, so I was going with him. So some weekends, when we visited the village, so a woman or a girl will run to us and say, "Unye doctor, me doctor's wife. If you had come last weekend, my child wouldn't have died," that kind of story. So it touched my spirit. I called my husband. I said, "Why don't you open a clinic so that you can be helping these people?" My husband said, "What? If you finish treating them, they will say, 'Oh, thank you, Nwa Julius. Julius' son has treated us, and there's no way we should pay him. We know the father. There is our relation. So how would I train my children if I come to establish a clinic here? I would not make money. So I now started thinking of what to do for the people because there was no hospital there. So I decided to go to the women's meeting and talk to them about an abandoned old building. How do we refurbish this building and make it a hospital? Because people are dying here. They don't have hospital attention. And the women were excited about my proposal because I'm not from there. I'm married there. It's like this woman is not from here. She doesn't have any relation here. And she is so passionate about helping us. So they joined. They contributed money. We finished it. And I went to the men's meeting and pleaded with them to equip it. And what I used to get them was just equip at the theater or the ward or wherever and get your name affixed there and get immortalized, your name, your company, your family or whatever. In 45 minutes, they took up the hospitals. I went to the Onisha market with my husband and the donors, and the hospital was equipped. And Professor B.C. Nwosu, the then Commissioner for Information, was called to help us. He donated some equipment. That was how we established a hospital in the village. And that was how I became a village champion. They now said, oh, this woman is our own. Oh, this woman should go to House of Reps. She should go to this. She should go to that. My husband said, no, you are not going anywhere. I don't like women politicians. You're too young for that. Anyway, I wasn't even tempted. I said, I want to be a professor. So I left after the establishment of that hospital. I said, I have finished my work. But thereafter, the village, the opinion leaders led by Chief Dan Obuefi, they were asked to nominate somebody to represent them in the local government. They nominated me. That was how I started my political career. I went to the local government to represent them. They were asked 3 times to represent somebody that would, nominate somebody that would represent them in state boards. I was nominated 4 times. So that was how, in the local government, I served in Health Management Board, I served in Advisory Council, Women Commission. I was the coordinator of Better Life for Anambra State, so I found myself totally immersed in the system.
But
that was how I started.
A masterstroke of your political decision was when you retired as Minister of Information and Communication in a PDP government and sought elect position on the platform of an opposition party, AFGA. Was that a conscious choice or political strategy?
Well, I believed in what I did, and I still believe in what I did. I don't regret anything because nothing happens without God's approval. I was a Minister of Information, and my governor invited me and wanted me to come and help him to seek election and serve my people on a different and, of course, higher platform. Elective position is better than appointive position. I hope you know that, especially when your people elect you to serve them. So some people did not agree with me, but I believed in what I did. My husband believed in it. I went for the election. I actually won the election. I'm not in the Senate today because of the 180 days expiration of cases. If the case was concluded, I would have been in the Senate. But all the same, that I'm not in the Senate is the will of God.
Madam,
I am not complaining.
You are a very vibrant.
It is the will of God.
You are a very vibrant and vocal person in Nigeria's political landscape, well known to everybody. Mm-hmm. But are you still in politics? Do you still nurse political ambition? You've been quiet for some time now.
Oh, I'm very much in politics. I am very much in politics. I still nurse political ambition. And if it is the will of God, I will run again for the Senate.
But some people are saying that the people you fought in Nafdac were the ones that fought you back.
Oh, they fought me back, but that was not why I lost. Even with all the money they put into that election to make sure that I did not get it, I still won. If I did not win, they should have allowed the case to be concluded on time so that the judges would count the votes from every polling booth and find out who had the majority votes. But yes, you're right. They contributed money, they helped, they did everything over their dead body, but it is not because of them. It is the will of God.
You were a major participant when Nigeria was kind of at a crossroads. Late Yar'adua was ill, and then we were neither here nor there before the Senate resolution. You came out and it's now popular across Nigeria, the so-called cabal. Can you just give us an insight into that, and why did you decide to speak about it?
That was why, part of the reason why I was honored in Niger Republic. In fact, the organizer called me heroine of democracy. And
part of the award you were given
part of the award.
In Niger.
There was a lot of emphasis on Nafdac, but there was also a little emphasis on what happened during the last months of President Yar'adua. May he so rest in peace. Right. What happened during that period was that we lied a lot to the public. Government was lying. I suspected that we were lying, but I wasn't too sure. You see, when people tell you, because I was reporting the meetings, when they told us President Yar'adua was playing with his children, the stories were not adding up. But when I confirmed that we were being fed with lies.
So at that time, you were not having access to the president?
No. Nobody had access to him once he was flown abroad. Nobody had access. The cabal took over. They were in charge of everything. It was all the president said, Mr. President said. Even when you knew they were lying, you could not be too sure. But when I confirmed that they were lying and confirmed that the president was not in a position to give instructions or sign anything, was when they went to get him signed, was it the bill, National Assembly bill? And when they came back, I started asking questions. You see, when people say, three people say three different things, then you know that they did not come together to agree on a common lie to tell. One of them said that they stayed in another town and sent the National Assembly document for the president to sign. One of them said, the same person told me, one person said he was downstairs and sent it up for him to sign. And another person told me that he went and saw him, and the ADC and the CSO did not allow him to talk with him, and they gave it to him to sign.
Inconsistency.
So there was inconsistency, and I concluded that we were being fed with lies, and I was consequently feeding the public with lies. I got disturbed. I got so disturbed that I was not able to sleep anymore. At a stage, I decided to travel. Took my leave for the first time, hoping that by the time I come back, by the time I came back from my leave, these things would be sorted out. But by the time I came back, it was still on. That was when, after the last council meeting, when the former Attorney General took over my job. And my face gave me out because I was in shock. I was looking at him in shock. I know our journalists are fantastic. They took that photograph and showed it in front of one of the newspapers. How I was looking at him in shock as he was making that report. And I actually told everybody around me that that was the last day I would appear publicly to tell a story that I had confirmed that was a lie. And a day before that council, I had started thinking of what to do. But before that day before council, I went to 3 ministers. One of them, I went to his house because of his age. And when I came to his house, I saw Dr. Kalu Idike-Kalu. I called Dr. Kalu Idike-Kalu, the former Minister of Finance. I said, my brother, this is why I have come here. I would want you to join your voice to mine if you can. Our democracy is collapsing. I want to speak to this man. I've spoken to 2 ministers. They don't want to help. But I think for the age of this man, he's not looking for money. He's not looking for anything. He should be able to join me. I want some people to join me. I don't want to do it alone. Dr. Kalu Idike-Kalu was so excited. He said, go ahead. Whatever you do, I support you. I called the man, talked to him. He said he was not ready to join me in saying anything. I should just leave it. I called the minister out from the church immediately after a mass. I said, Honorable Minister, we have to do something. Our democracy is collapsing. People died over the years for us to get the democracy we're enjoying. If it collapses, those of us that feel that we have to keep our job, we still lose this job. The minister said I should just leave him. This thing is too delicate. If the man comes back, I called the minister, the third. That one said he was coming to my office. I said, listen, I want us to come together. He said, no, Yar'adua did so much for me, I can't afford to fight him. I said, we are not fighting Yar'adua. The man is ill. It is not a crime to be ill. It's just that we want the vice president to become acting president. The system is getting derailed. Look at the story. He cannot send troops to Jos. He cannot do this. He cannot sign this. That's why they told so many lies. Anyway, he said he was never going to join me in the process. So I decided to go solo. I wrote, after those 3 people, I stopped meeting anybody. After writing that memo, I called my SA, Mr. Gumba, to my house in the morning. I said, Ron. He said, what is going on? Are you not going to council? I said, you must be here before 8:30. He came, he read it. After reading it, he said, Mommy, this is suicidal. You can't do this. I said, why shouldn't I do it? If I die, I die. He said, but our job is on the line. I said, if our democracy collapses, you will still lose your job. So I went and presented it that morning. And after I distributed the papers, some of them read it quickly. The secretary to government said, no, retrieve these papers. You know, some people started abusing me. The highest voice was that of the Attorney General. And it went on and on. I was so harassed that I forgot my council papers and box in that council chambers and left. I came back to collect them. Anyway, my husband was also upset when he heard it. He called me and said, why did you do this? Why did you do this? You suffered too much in Nafdac. And I said to my husband, yes, I didn't tell you, I'm sorry. Because I know that if I told you, you would not agree. If Abraham had told Sarah he was going to sacrifice Isaac, Sarah would not have allowed him leave the house. So it's like I had reply for everybody, and I have no regret. I know I am still suffering from that because too many people are still angry with me, but honestly speaking,
do you feel vindicated, kind of?
I feel vindicated because immediately after that memo issue, it triggered a spiral response from everywhere. National Assembly, these groups and that groups, and eventually our president became acting president, became president, and is still president. What is important is that our democracy was stabilized. And I was not out to fight President Yar'adua. In fact, President Yar'adua, if he saw me some meters away, even as a president, he would shout, my sister, how are my sister? So we were close enough. I was even closer to the wife. So it was not a personal fight. It was like I was Minister of Information. I found myself in an awkward position. I was the person that would relay the lies to the public. And I got to a point where I said I would no longer do that.
Madam.
And I was relieved after that memo. I was able to sleep again.
Yes. Looking at this action, how would you say people should approach public office? Should their loyalty be to the nation, or their loyalty and to their oath of office, or their loyalty to their so-called godfather or whoever?
You see, public service is a call. It's a call to service in a special way. Especially in a population like ours, where you have millions of people and you're selected among the few to pilot the affairs of government. You should see it as sacred. Loyalty should be to your boss, yes, when he asks you to do what is correct. I can also be stubborn. If I'm asked to do what is wrong, I will not do it. But greater loyalty should be to the country, because it is to the country that you swore the day you were being sworn in. And it is loyalty to the country that will bring about common good for majority of our people. So I believe I had loyalty to my boss, but I had greater loyalty to the country. And that's what it should be.
Now, going back to your award in Niamey, at that event you spoke about starting a foundation in respect of the fight against fake and adulterated drugs. Tell us more about it and what you will do different.
Yeah, I want to continue the fight against fake and counterfeit medicine, but in a different way. And I want to do it for life. And I also want whatever I will do to outlive me. I have started the process of Dora Akunyili Foundation for Safe Medicine, but I don't want to give out what it will be now so that the counterfeiters will not start fighting it. I want them to just see it, bam, and they will have nothing to do.
Now,
so I don't want to bring it out to the open now. Suffice it to say that it's in the process.
Now, what are we likely going to be hearing, knowing that you are coming from Anambra?
Well, yes, I'm coming from Anambra.
And Abga.
Abga, we have issues here and there which are being sorted out by the grace of God. We are still family. We are still brothers and sisters. And by the grace of God, when these issues are sorted out, we are going to have convention, congresses, and our gubernatorial election. I'm not running for governor. Somebody else will run. Our governor, who is the leader of our party in Anambra State, has said the governor should come from Anambra North, because Anambra North has never produced governor. You see, this zoning thing. And once the governor has spoken and generality of the people accepted it, there will be no need for anybody from the other two zones to come out. And besides, I've always been interested in the Senate, which I would want to go back to run. And at this time around, I'm not going to start rigging to outrig anybody, but I'm going to make sure that nobody is able to rig and that our votes are protected. Because on the day of election, thugs run out of the state.
Are you going to Senate because you are not satisfied with what is going on there, or the number of women there, or what?
No, I don't ever think of being a woman. I'm going to Senate to serve my people in a special way. I'm going to Senate to be a voice for my people, a voice for the nation. I'm going to Senate to show that in being in the Senate, one can still do a lot of things differently. And I will withhold other things until the right time to talk about them. But I know that in the Senate, I will definitely make a difference.
I've been speaking with the patriotic and vibrant Professor Dora Akunyili, a professor of pharmacology, former Minister of Information, DG Nafdac, a humanist, politician, and international activist who gave us insights into her continuing journey through life and service to democracy and humanity. Madam, thank you very much for coming on Late Edition.
Thank you.
That's Late Edition. I'm Ibrahim Ismaila Ahmed.